Today's guests think that vertical top-level domains will be big for many reasons. They're offering a top-level domain that's social, it's a potential to competitor to sites like meetup.com and Facebook, and the registry thinks it's going to sell millions of them, not just a few 100,000. If this sounds like an investment or a startup opportunity for you, stay tuned to learn more. I have 3 short sponsor messages before we get into today's show. First, if you have a great domain name and nothing to show when people visit, you're missing out on potential advertising revenue, leads, and partnership opportunities. NicheWebsites.com can build you a site quickly with a price option to suit any need. But as their tagline says, they don't just build websites, they build businesses. Second, if you're buying or selling a domain name or a portfolio and you want an estimate of its value, Estabot.com is the place to go. Just like you'd visit Zillow.com to get an estimate of a house value, Estabot.com provides key information about the most important statistics so you can make an informed decision based on data. Finally, DNX.com is a domain name exchange that uses a reverse auction platform to provide fair market prices for quality domain names that are manually filtered by an experienced broker. At DNX.com, domain prices drop until someone decides the price is right. But don't wait too long or the domain you love might be purchased by someone else. All 3 sponsors have a clickable banner in the upper right-hand corner of DomainSherpa.com. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name investor and entrepreneur directly from the experts. We're going to dig into and learn about a new top-level domain that's social-based and has high aspirations for registrations during the first 5 years. According to their ICANN top-level domain application, the registry is targeting social clubs, sporting clubs, special interest hobby clubs, country clubs, buying clubs, fraternities and sororities, personal clubs, professional clubs, school clubs, service clubs, and nightclubs. Joining us today from the .club registry is CEO Colin Campbell and Chief Marketing Officer Jeff Sass. Colin and Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us on.
Thanks, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
For anyone that hasn't met you two, let me give a quick bio. Colin Campbell, currently CEO of .club. He co-founded the registrar Two Cows and Hostopia, a website hosting and service provider now owned by the public company Deluxe, the company that makes those checks. He's also held director roles with the Canadian Internet Registry Association and the Canadian Association of Internet Providers. Jeff Sass is a serial entrepreneur as well. He is an advisor to several companies and co-founder of the Social Object Factory. He's CMO of .club currently and recently served as vice president and chief evangelist for mobile entertainment company Mixer. How'd I do, gentlemen?
Sounds great.
Fine.
All right, Colin, tell me one thing about Jeff that most people don't know, and please make it embarrassing.
He likes to party. At these ICANN events, he knows how to have some fun.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. Because I didn't get to party with him. Because I didn't get to party with him at Traffic. So for the next event, I'm going to make sure to find Jeff and party with him.
Well, at Traffic, you should have found me because at Traffic, I was holding court for a while at the bar outside there. We had a little Bloody Mary club going on.
Nice.
Right? There was unlimited Bloody Marys for a while. That was
All right. Well, we'll need to figure out. Are you going to NamesCon in January?
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you there. Jeff,
Excellent.
Tell me one thing about Colin that most people don't know. Maybe it's a secret talent or a superpower. What do you got?
Well, with .club domains, everything for us is about passion, and there are 2 things that Colin is passionate about that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's others, but one is his dogs.
Keep it clean.
No, his dogs. The breed is
King Charles Spaniel.
King Charles Spaniels, and the other is Coke Zero.
Oh.
Coke Zero.
Zero.
I'm addicted to Coke Zero. I admit
Constant
it.
supply. So there's actually caffeine in Coke Zero. Is that correct?
There is. In
Just no
fact,
sugar.
we modeled our logo, the colors, after the Coke Zero bottle. The red, black, and white, right?
All right. Well, it's ingrained in people's minds, so why not? All right. So let's start with
What about something about you, Michael?
Something about me?
Yes.
Oh, no. It's not your show, gentlemen. All right, let's start with the mission of .club and how it's not been served by the domain name industry so far?
Yeah, well, let me just kick it off because I'm a big believer in the whole verticalized GTLD space. I mean, I've been at Hostopia. We did a study of the verticalized GTLDs. By the way, I'm not as a big proponent of the names that are similar to meaning to a .com, for instance. .com is a great TLD. You know, I'm a real big believer in those names that sort of complement a .com or even define something different than a .com. So someone would actually choose a verticalized TLD over a .com. So something like a .wiki or even a .club. The mission for us is really about helping small communities, clubs, university clubs, all those clubs that you mentioned, come together in an easy way online. So finding a great brand to represent yourself online and market yourself online, and then have the software and other services to back that up. And we're actually working, closely with the registrars like GoDaddy and 101 and a number of them to promote the name and to make it very easy for communities to form around that brand.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead. Please go ahead, Jeff.
I'm going to say, one of the things that's interesting about the introduction of new top-level domains is the opportunity to find a domain name that really has meaning. .com, it's a great brand. There's no doubt about it. But it's a great brand because it was the first and it became the default, not because it actually means anything, right? With the new top-level domains, and in particular with a name like Club, it actually adds meaning to whatever you put to the left of the dot. So you put anything in front of .club, and immediately it means people coming together around a common interest or passion, right? Anything. You put your name, Michael.club versus Michael.com. Michael.com is a great name. Obviously, if you have it, you'd be happy, but it doesn't tell you anything about it. Michael.club tells you that it's about a community. It's about passion. So the opportunity to get new domain names that actually add meaning is really interesting, and it's going to be very interesting for smart marketers. You'll see a lot more campaign-based domain names coming out because you can find something that really matches the intent and the interest of that campaign.
Now, most of the time when I think of a club, I think of a not-for-profit. It's an organization. It's a group of individuals who have banded together to learn something or share time on a common interest, like King George Spaniels. Was that with the dog?
King Charles Spaniels.
King Charles Spaniels, not King George. And I don't think that they're in it for the money necessarily. Do you think that most of the registrations that will come via .club will be similar?
No, not at all, actually. When you think of the word club, one of the things that's really important to recognize is club is a global brand. The word club is spelled the same and actually means the same thing all over the world. Germany, the Netherlands, China, Japan. You'll go to China, you'll see Chinese characters followed by C-L-U-B, and it has the same meaning. So we're talking about a word that means something globally. And actually, when you look at the entertainment and sports world, especially outside the U.S., every sports team outside the U.S. is a club. It's the Manchester United Football Club. These are all clubs all over the world. So when you look at the clubs and associations that use the name, they're very much for-profit organizations. Look at every golf and country club in the country. Look at every chess club. Look at every, the Rotary Club. I mean, there are literally millions of clubs and organizations that are not, nonprofits, that are for-profit, that are big businesses. And there's a lot of opportunities for innovation and new companies to be formed around a .club name, because again, as soon as you put club at the end of it, it tells you that you're bringing a community together. So whether it's travel.club or poker.club or any of the numerous premium names that are going to be available, it means something. So I think the opportunity for .club is much, much, much larger than thinking of nonprofit organizations. That's a teeny piece of the pie.
Sure.
Very
so
big pie.
We've got hundreds of new top-level domains coming out over the next, months, years. Top-level domains like .tattoo and .sexy and .xyz and, you name it. I had just on a couple of weeks ago, Ken Hansen, who's recently left Newstar to start up the .co.com top-level domain. That and I asked him, how did you verify that real customers will want to register the domain name? And when I think about that question, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think, well, if I'm going to build a service for a company, I want to make sure before I invest any time or money that I'm going to have real customers that are willing to spend real money for that product or service. With yours, the .club top level domain, I can see the connection, right? There's a lot of people out there that have clubs. There's millions of clubs registered, as you mentioned. Did you actually go out and verify that people will spend money, or is it just enough to go do market research and find out how many how many clubs there are and estimate that some percentage of them will want a .club top level domain?
Right. I mean, first of all, when we started studying this one, we researched the number of clubs in the world. The 37,000 Rotary clubs, to give you an example. There are approximately between 10 and 20 million around the world traditional style clubs. And then you've also add to that, you also have the university clubs, the academic clubs, the high school clubs. There obviously, it goes well beyond just our initial analysis. In fact, if you do a root zone analysis, you'll find that there are 489,000 clubs, the word club, left of the dot in .com, net, and org. So, I mean, that was one reason why, we were confident in investing a lot of money in this domain name. The other thing, I mean, the reality is the market is beginning to speak. It's beginning to give us some signs. I know there's been a lot of expression of interest by a number of companies. The reality is in almost every company that's done an expression of interest or pre-registration, I know there's sort of, unique pre-registrations, we'll call them. Yeah. But the reality is we've been featured in the top 10 list or the most popular list of almost every company that's done these pre-registrations. We're lucky, I'll tell you that, because in the next 6 months, .club will be launching. It is coming to market. We were successful in winning an auction, and there are a lot of other TLDs in that top market. And if you look at, for instance, the United Domains top 40, there's only one generic that will launch in the first half of 2014, and that is .club. The .shop, the .web, and all of these others, they're caught in this contention. They're caught in the auction. We early on decided to go to a private auction with Donuts and Merchant Law. We were able to raise $8.2 million. We can say that. And today we've invested more than $5 million for that auction and for the marketing and the legals and the application fee.
To get to where we are.
Yeah, to get to where we are today. So we've the good thing here is that we're out of the gate. We're ready to go, and we're working very closely with the registrars to make certain that we launch in a big way.
Great. The other thing, Michael, the other thing that's interesting too, and I think it's interesting to your audience too, to domain investors in particular, is in the case of .club, it's not necessarily in competition with .com. It's not necessarily a case of either or. We actually see many opportunities where a .club name is very complementary to a .club, and particularly in the retail market. Yeah. In the retail market, right? You have many retailers, including big brands, use some form of club for their loyalty and affinity programs. And there's an opportunity to use a .club name to point to that. So instead of it being a subdomain of their .com, their .com is their storefront, it's their corporate site, but their community is their .club, right? Their community is their .club address. So it's not a matter of either or. They work together very well, especially in the retail market.
Just take one, wine.club. Right? I mean, when you search wine clubs on the internet, there are thousands of wine clubs.
Right.
So the company that owns wine.club, they're going to have the logical authority to rule the space. The domain, whoever has that domain, that's a phenomenal domain to promote a wine club.
Well, I want to ask you more about that wine.club versus maybe a wineclub.com and get your thoughts about that. But let me ask you a few questions about the auction and your investors and the registry in general. How many investors are there in the .club top level domain?
27 investors. The majority of the stock is owned by myself, but we have a very diverse group of investors from even a well-known domainer, Ken Lawson. I don't know if you know Ken Lawson. He owns pizza.com and a number of other domains. It's whoever it was a funny situation actually, because 30 days prior to the auction, I began to realize this thing's going to sell for a little more than I initially had thought. And so I went and we filed a Reg D filing and to raise the $8.2 million. The $7 million was follow on to raise the $7 million. And I couldn't use a broker to raise the money. I had to literally pick up the phone and call contacts, people who I knew in the industry who would be interested in it. And just using my LinkedIn contacts and whatnot, I was able to put together the 26 investors in about 15 days.
Wow.
And then we were ready for the auction. It was an interesting, very stressful period of time. But
I bet. Now, did you bring in any investors from outside the domain name industry, Colin?
Well, my mom, she invested.
She doesn't count. She's related to you.
Two counts. She came along for Hostopia, and now she's coming along for Dr. Club as
Good
well.
for mom. Hopefully, third time is going to pay off like the first two.
That's right.
All right, so you got 27 investors, mainly from the domain name industry. You beat out Donuts and Merchant Law Group for the .club top-level domain. The final auction price I couldn't find online. Is that public information?
No, it's not.
Okay, but you mentioned $5 million spent on the auction, the lawyers, and the marketing to date. So the auction is assumed to be less than $5 million since lawyers don't work for free.
That's that.
And does the auction, let's just use a round number, under $5 million paid at the auction. Does that mean that Donuts and Merchant Law Group split that amount?
Yes, less the cost of the running the auction. But yes, it was really interesting. So it's a private auction between the three parties who had applications for .club. And in this case, the winning applicant, which was us, pays the amount, and that amount gets divvied up amongst the other participants. So in our case, it was two other companies. In some auctions, it could be more.
So I don't know the total amount. If it was $4 million paid at the auction, that means that the other two parties, Donuts and Merchant Law Group, were not willing to spend more than what you were in the auction, and then they split that amount that you paid.
Correct.
That is
minus
correct.
the commission fees to the company running it. Understand? And there was only 3 applications for .club?
That's correct. Yeah, we were very fortunate because when you look at some of the big players in the space now, you have companies like Google, which applied for over 100 names, and Amazon, which applied for almost 100 names. One of them applied for .team, and the other applied for .group, and neither of them applied for .club. So we really dodged quite a bullet there.
Yeah, because Google coming in with their billions of dollars in the bank could have easily taken over the .club.
It's hard. So
we'd be the Walking Dead GTLD applicant if that was the case.
Well, you'd have cash in your pocket, maybe not enough to pay back your investors, but
can't beat Google and Amazon. That would be a tough one, though.
Yeah. So let's talk about registrations. How many registrations do you anticipate having reserved at the end of the first year, second year, third year?
Okay, our target right now is 5 million names in 5 years, 1 million names in 1 year, and 300,000 to 400,000 names on or about GA, the week of GA.
GA, general availability.
General availability,
Correct.
Yeah, which we estimate to be around mid to late April, the general availability date. The reality is we put together some very competitive pricing in the industry. We don't have any of these different pricing schemes. We have one simple price. It's $9.75 wholesale, and we're offering a registrars a 20% launch discount in the first year. So it's very competitive pricing. The renewal pricing is also very competitive. It's the same price as GA. And even if you purchase a name in LandRush, it's still the GA pricing. So if you buy Wine.club for $100,000, your renewal rate will be the whatever rate that GoDaddy and One-on-One charge for those names.
Understand. All right. I watched a prior interview where you said the wholesale pricing to registrars was going to be $7.80. Now you say $9.75. Is that just adjustments as you get ready for the launch?
Oh, that's correct. That's correct. So it's $9.75 is the wholesale price. However, I mentioned earlier that we have a launch discount the first year. There'll be a 20% discount, so the price will be $7.80 for registrars in the first year, and then there'll be volume tiers that they need to meet in subsequent years in order to keep that discount.
Understand. So most registrars will probably mark it up 100%, so they may sell it for $18 or $20 for a registration, but some of them may use the domains as loss leaders and to try and get people to do hosting. Is that roughly what you see?
Yeah, it's going to be up to the individual registrar, but it seems to be in the ballpark.
Okay. 1 million in the first year. That is a lot of registrations. How do you know that that's not an overly optimistic number to shoot for?
I think that the reality is it is a global brand. It means so many things to so many people. I think I hate to say we're a little bit lucky here in that we're the only top name to come to market, the top, global branded TLD to come to market early on. You see companies like, One-on-One that have spent more than 50 million euros, and they feature us, very prominently in their most popular list. You see companies like GoDaddy right now, which features, 4 new TLDs coming out, and .club is one of those TLDs. So obviously, we're working closely with the registrars. We have a great name. We're working closely with the registrars, and we have a great marketing budget. You know, the money's not going to sit in the bank. We're going to be investing heavily in marketing and promoting this name.
Yeah, and also there's other market segments we didn't even talk about that are huge. You know, we talk about, you mentioned in your introduction, Michael, that this was a social domain name. And when you think of the social world we live in today, it's never been easier for people with common interests to come together. You know, they come together on Facebook, and they come together on Google and Yahoo and LinkedIn, these groups. There are over 600 million Facebook groups. Every one of those groups is really just a little club. And right now, their domain name, their identity is facebook.com/groups/ yada, yada, yada. Even if a fraction of those groups just take a great .club name and forward it to their Facebook page so that they have an identity that they own, that they can take away at some point if they want to leave Facebook, that's an extremely simple and valuable solution that .club is perfect for. So there's a really big market here. It's global. It goes from the obvious established clubs and organizations to retail loyalty and affinity programs to all these online groups I just spoke about to the whole sports and entertainment field. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, really the broadest group is passionate consumers. Colin's got his passion for the King Charles
Spaniel,
right? So he might want to have King Charles Spaniels .club to express that passion. Everyone has something they're passionate about, and a .club name is a great way to express that passion.
My daughter's already said she wants 221B .club.
221B.
221B, 221 Baker Street. You know, Sherlock Holmes .club. She wants a club with a blog and, you know, fan fiction and all of that around Sherlock Holmes. And she's very big on this idea of launching 221B .club.
Now, have you held that back from registration? Is she guaranteed to get it?
Well, I don't know. We'll still have to compete in the. Right?
We'll see how much the offers come in for.
Exactly. That'll be another auction.
I think a lot of registries are planning on receiving a certain number of defensive registrations. It seems to me that there are some top-level domains that were only launched for defensive registrations. Do you think you'll receive what percentage of your 1 million anticipated registrations during the first year do you anticipate will be defensive registrations?
I don't know the percentage, Michael, but I would say that we expect to get a lot of defensive or protection registrations. And here's why. But I think there's an advantage that we have over the other ones. Typically, brands go after sort of gripe names and pornography and things that will embarrass them, right? In the case of .club, it's not an issue of embarrassment. It's an issue of owning and protecting your community, right? The .club name represents your community, so brands want to own that community. Nike.club represents Nike's community. It's important for Nike to own and control that. They don't want someone else controlling their community. And so we think there's going to be a lot of brands who will want their .club name for that reason. Unlike the gripe addresses, though, they can actually use that .club name. Many of the names that they register for protection, they'll never use. They want to shove them in a closet and make sure no one touches them. In the case of .club, not only do they get to protect their community, but now they have a name that they can actually put to good use.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, I love your passion. I believe that you're tapping the desk when you talk. Really, are you doing that?
Sorry,
all right. I can't see your hands. No problem. I'm hearing it come through. So I just wanted to point it out. Let's talk about the schedule, because you guys aren't one of the first domain name to launch. I think your order is like over 1,000, but you anticipate launching in early 2014. Can you walk me through the schedule of launch phases that entrepreneurs and investors should be aware of?
Yeah, sure. That's interesting because we've been lucky again with this, right? You know, we signed our contract on November 8th. There's been about 150 companies so far, roughly, that have signed their ICANN contract. And then we were lucky because we got a fairly early PDT date. So PDT is pre-delegation testing, which we started on November 25th. So we're actually expecting delegation by the end of the year, and then going into Sunrise in January. A lot of it today, you know, you start out with the number. And our number was 1,046. But the reality is, a lot of the brands, they've been going a little slow here. There's been there's hundreds of names that are in contention. They have GAC advice. We don't have any GAC advice. We're a completely open name. There's no restrictions. To be quite frank, it's just we got a hell of a lot of luck on our side when it comes to getting to market.
Excellent.
And that's the other thing, Colin mentioned no restrictions. That's important to know too. A number of the new domains, especially the ones that are very verticalized, have special requirements. You have to validate that you're in a certain class of company in order to get that domain name. name, etc. .club is not like that. It's completely open. You don't have to actually be a club. We're not validating anything. Anyone who wants a .club name can get one for any use they want.
Excellent. Okay, so Sunrise for those who have trademarks registered, you said was January, and
January to March.
January to
and
March.
And then mid-March, for a month, we'll have a 30-day land rush period, and then a 7-day sort of breather GA land rush period. And so we're talking about really the end of April for the general availability.
All right, we talked about the pricing structure. I looked at your website, .club.com, and it looks like you have almost every single major registrar in the world lined up to sell .club top-level domains. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, we're going to Japan and China on January 3rd. So it's going to be a week out in the East because it's such a great word that works all over the world, and we're getting calls from countries which again we never would have expected when we started out with this, but all over the world there's interest in .club.
Yeah, and just to clarify, those are all sites that are offering some type of pre-registration or expressions of interest for .club right now, and we're in the process of signing the registrar agreements right now.
Okay. And so if I register a .club, let's say at GoDaddy, and after the first year I want to transfer it to another registrar, anybody that signs a registrar agreement with you, the registry is open for me to transfer that domain to.
That is correct.
That's
We're
right.
our back end is Newstar. It works very similar to a .com or .biz transfer.
Yeah, it should be no different.
Okay. And I think a lot of people have questions about that. A lot of people outside the industry that don't understand these new top-level domains, and if they register one, or even the top-level domains that aren't, quote-unquote, ICANN accredited registries like .co.com, if only a certain number of registrars come on board to sell those domain names, that limits the pool by which they can transfer the domain name to. Is that correct?
No, that is correct. And again, we're fortunate in that almost every major registrar is very excited about the prospect of launching .club. So we don't have that issue. I know that some of the highly verticalized TLDs may have some of those issues, but that's not an issue for us.
Okay. What will be the auction process for premium registration? So, for example, I assume that hundreds of people plus have gone to oneandone.com and registered book.club or poker.club. How will those premium domain names be handled?
Okay. We have what we call a land rush process. So it's fairly, you might be very, very familiar with it. It's a process whereby if two registrars, for instance, I know that one-on-one's taking unique registrations for their expressions of interest. GoDaddy will take unique expressions of interest or pre-registrations, and they'll come together. And we have a relationship with CEDO. So CEDO will handle whether there are two companies that come together and they bid on it, or two individuals. That CEDO will manage the auctions.
Yeah, and CEDO will manage some premium name auctions as well. We're also working with Right of the Dot on some super premium names with Monty and Michael. I think Michael's appeared on Domain Sherpa a couple times.
Quite a few times. Michael's actually on the Domain Sherpa Review, which we conduct every Wednesday and airs every Thursday as well.
Yeah,
And of course, Monty has. So book.club, if I wasn't the first to get my unique pre-registration in at 1&1 or at GoDaddy, am I out of the book.club auction?
Not necessarily. No. There are select a few thousand names that we're putting aside in what we call a premium name list. Mm-hmm. Those names will be available through CEDO, and they'll be anyone will be able to bid on those names. The reality is, though, when you look at club, there are so many great domain names. We might book wine.club might be in our premium names list, but redwine.club might go into Land Rush. So there's so many great names that can hit the market at Land Rush. Yeah. So I really, that's an important point because, if you're not paying attention, there's a lot of domain names that are going to get taken up in Land Rush and general availability, quite frankly.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, we believe that, the domain investor is an important part of the whole ecosystem. It's why, we were at Traffic I said hello to you there, I think, Michael, and I was on a panel there. We'll be at the conference in January in Vegas. We're supporting the domain investors side of the business as well, because it's an important part of the overall ecosystem. And I think there's some great opportunities with .club names. As Colin mentioned, we do have a premium list, but there are so many great .club names that a lot of good names will be available in LandRush and in general availability for domain investors.
Yep.
So that was not always the case either. I mean, I have to, I have to admit, in the '90s when we were at Two Cows in a company called Internet Direct, we looked at domain investors almost like speculators, and we almost like treated them like spammers and whatnot. So I've come a long way over the last.
We've evolved.
Yeah, I've evolved. I've come a long way over the last. I think it is it's very important for an ecosystem to be able to develop, a market to be able to develop. The reality is, there's a lot of companies are going to love .club, but it might take time for them to realize that, and that you have these domain investors that can come in the middle and profit from it.
Now, I'm the type of entrepreneur that looks at a domain name and thinks about different ideas and business models, and then if one of them is interesting enough, I will potentially make an investment. I'm sure a lot of other people are that way as well, because there's different ways to try and solve a problem. How can I get access to the premium list of domain names that you're withholding for individual sale before the CETO auction and general availability? Names that I assume include poker.club and wine.club.
Yeah, we haven't talked about publishing a list as of yet. I mean, I think that's a great idea. I know obviously once we get through Sunrise, I think Sunrise sort of trumps any of the LandRush at this point. So once we get through that, we'll have a final list. I know CETO will put that online, and again, certain select names, Monty and Michael from the Right of the Dot we've hired them to help us as advisors, but we've also hired them to identify some of the best, we call them category killers, and working with them, we're going to take those to market in a big way. Okay,
so if anybody is interested in that list, go to rightofthedot.com, contact Monty Kahn or Michael Birkins, and they can supply you that list.
Well, after Sunrise. Let's get
after Sunrise.
Sunrise, they'll have it, and then CETO will have a portion of the names as well.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. So you already mentioned that if I buy a domain name like wine.com and I pay a premium amount, let's say $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000, whatever that cost is, the renewal price will be whatever the registrar's renewal price will be, and I can transfer that from location to location. So we're not going to have the issue where a .tv domain was registered for $1,000 and then that becomes their annual registration cost.
Definitely not.
Okay.
No.
And will retail prices at the registrars be available before you start selling domain names?
We presume that the registrars like GoDaddy, 101 will actually, under the pre-registration model, will announce the prices. That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that clearly selling domain names to clubs and entrepreneurs to get them built up and running so people can experience them, become more familiar with the top level domain is important. It's critical, as well as the investor and the speculators, those that are buying. Will you offer a founders program where individuals or groups are encouraged to build out websites?
Yes, absolutely. Our founders program, of course, is called the Founders Club. And we're talking to a number of brands and companies right now who are already interested in participating. And if anyone listening to this has a company where a .club name makes sense and you want to be part of that Founders Club program, just get in touch with me, jeff@.club.com.
Okay. And how does that work? How will it, what benefits will you provide? How will the pricing work? All that sort of.
So the pricing, it's really a combination. Each case is a little bit individual, and it's a combination of the kind of exposure that we'll get from the usage by the particular brand in combination with exposure that we'll give them. As Colin mentioned, we have a pretty substantial marketing budget. We're going to be doing a lot of general awareness marketing, and the companies that are part of our Founders Club program will benefit from a lot of that marketing. So they'll be featured in that marketing, and we'll be marketing them. And conversely, we'll have the benefit of their usage and the exposure that we get of that using it. So pricing is based on that combination. Obviously, the more exposure we're getting from them, the less they're going to be paying for it.
Sure, I understand. So that's a great benefit. So I am not a King George Spaniel. What did I name?
King Charles. That's
King
King
Charles.
Charles.
I don't know what's going on with King George. I'm not a big history fan, so clearly I'm a Doberman lover. So if I want to start Dobermans.club,
That's
I
right.
can contact you. You'll provide additional marketing. If I build out the website, create some sort of registration, I want to, make it an organization for Doberman lovers on training and, the best toys that they love and how to care for them and, Doberman rescue and all that sort of stuff. So would I have to pay for the domain name? Would I be the registrant of the domain name? Would that standard.club? How does that work?
Yeah, so it depends on really the value. If it's wine.club, for instance, we know it's valuable.
Sure.
We believe it's in the hundreds of thousands in wine.club. And so we would look at the value of the domain name. And if you said to us we're going to spend $1 million in advertising wine.club, we would look at that as as part of the domain name. You might pay for the domain name, then we might kick in a few $100,000 for your advertising. So there's some real hard advertising dollars that we're willing to put up for the right founders who can really promote the .club domain.
All right, that makes sense. All right, so contact Jeff if you're interested in learning more about the Founders Program. I assume that I wouldn't be able to have a discussion with you about Dobermans .club until after sunrise?
Well, we could certainly have a discussion about it, but ultimately it wouldn't be able to be real until after sunrise to make sure that there wasn't a trademark holder that took that name.
All right, so let's talk about trademark holders. How are you helping trademark owners protect their intellectual property in your top-level domain? For example, if Safeway, the supermarket chain, massive in the United States, maybe up in Canada as well, doesn't want to use Safeway.club, what can they do to prevent others from using it?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Safeway. Go ahead, Jeff.
No. Well, Safeway has their club card, so Safeway's actually someone who'd be very interested in using .club. But I mean, the trademark holders, the system is set up very specifically through ICANN for trademark holders to register with the Trademark Clearinghouse, and that gives them not only the opportunity to participate in all the various sunrise periods, but it also gives them other protections in that there's a period of time by which registrars are given the information of the registered marks in the clearinghouse, and they have to notify them if someone tries to register their trademark name that they haven't purchased, and then they have the opportunity to contact that party and take whatever action they feel is necessary. But other than that, it's as it is now. People can file UDRPs later on, and if they think something's being used that shouldn't be used, et cetera.
Yeah, so that's the process. If a small business owner like myself, for example, and there's millions of small business owners that own a trademark to their product or service, like I do for Domain Sherpa. And if I don't want to pay my $2,000 to the Trademark Clearinghouse, because it really doesn't prevent anybody from registering it, it only notifies them and notifies me. So I, as a small business owner, don't see a lot of benefit to doing that. And if somebody actually does register DomainSherpa.club, for example, my next course of action is to monitor it, to potentially send them a cease and desist from using the domain name as I would with any other top-level domain, and then go as far as to request a UDRP, dispute resolution policy, for that domain name.
It's no different than it would be with a .com name.
Yeah, I think trademark holders have to pick and choose here. You can't, there are hundreds of TLDs, but the reality is there are only there's only 10 top 10 TLDs. There's only 20 top 20 TLDs. That's one thing to look at. Another thing to look at, is it relevant to the trademark holder? In the case of, Safeway, they have a club membership. So obviously it's very relevant for them to have that. And for most brands, it's relevant to have a TLD as well. If you have a wiki on your corporate site, you might want a .wiki as well. So it's relevant, right? So I think the idea of trying to block gripe names and all these types of names, I think that's going to begin to go away. It's just too expensive, and there's just not the return on investment. Whereas I think that, names that can actually mean something and add to the value of your organization or company, I think they'll be the ones that companies begin to focus more on as we go forward.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about customer adoption? In general, people don't like to change. And although we see technology advancing, Amazon just came out with their massive PR about the drones delivering packages and dropping it on your doorstep. And that's not going to happen for a few years because of, certain legal ramifications, but they're starting the PR machine now, and it's maybe going to take 10 years before drones are actually delivering. What are your views on customer adoption? How long will it take a regular person, ignorant of the new TLDs coming out, to realize that you can have more than 3 letters right of the dot? That .club is a top-level domain, just like .com, .net, .org.
I think it's a great question. I love that question because it's part of my zone of where I live my whole life when it comes to, paradigm shifts, right from the start of the internet to broadband, et cetera. And so we have another paradigm happening here, all these new TLDs. I call it a discontinuous innovation because the reality is we're asking 6-7 billion people on the planet to change the way they think about naming on the internet, which is really tough. It's really tough to do. So I think the names that, the sort of the continuous innovation, the names that sort of fit within the standards, are those names that are short and can very easily connect with an individual who today uses a .com, who might have heard of a .info, who might have heard of .co, and you can stretch to go with .club. But you begin to run into a little bit more difficulty when you have longer TLDs. Even with Twitter, there's some issues around links if you have more than 4 characters in the Twitter. And so there's a lot of technology. I know at the last ICANN conference, there's a lot of discussion about IDNs, about longer TLDs, and working with technology providers to try to get them to change their systems, their e-commerce systems. But the reality is today, short is something that consumers understand. The pricing models, again, when you're charging $1,000 a name, that's not necessarily something that people understand. They understand the .com pricing model. So, I think for those TLDs that sort of match the pricing, that are short and have meaning and memorable, et cetera. Yep. I think those TLDs are all what I call continuous innovation. It's easy to make a leap to those TLDs. I think the TLDs that, to say that you'll have 8 characters to the right of the dot and 3 characters to the left, you sort of have to, it's going to take time. I do believe over time, especially with the way the search engine works, et cetera, that will happen. But we could be 5 to 10 years away from real change there. And with IDNs as well, the international domain name system, I think that that could take some time as well to adapt.
Yeah, and you have a lot of new people coming to the internet too. So it's not just about the existing market. In the existing market, you got 2 types of people. You have people who have a great .com name and people who don't have a great .com name, right? So the people who already have a great .com name, that's going to remain extremely valuable. And our goal is not to get them to shift. No one should or probably will give up a great .com name. But people who don't have a great .com name and who are looking for a new name that has more meaning and has more relevance to their business or to their website or whatever, they may look to a new top-level domain name. They may look at the new strings because it gives them an opportunity to brand themselves better. And then new people coming into the market, for them, it's just going into a store with more products on the shelf. They're coming in for the first time. If you're starting a new business and you're thinking about naming your business, now you have far more choices. So if you can't get that .com you were hoping for your business, you actually have tremendous choice now to find the name that best expresses that new business or idea you have. So there's a lot of opportunity on both sides of that fence, I think.
Yep, that makes sense. Let's talk about marketing plans. There are a lot of companies that have, 10, 20, 30 top-level domains that they're angling for, and they want to get live and they want to market and have successful. Be successful. It's hard for me to imagine how they would focus proper energies on each of those top-level domains. You are a registry. You have one top-level domain. You're going to be marketing.club. You already mentioned that you are incentivizing registrars by offering a 20% launch discount off the wholesale price. You're doing co-marketing with registrars that you've already started with. You have a founders program where you will kick in marketing dollars for partners that are developing websites that are going to spend money on marketing that you can help and amplify. What other marketing initiatives are you going to launch that will help build the brand of .club so that, investors, entrepreneurs, or just single registrants will find more comfort knowing that when they buy a .club or register a .club that other people are going to know about it?
No, it's great. And Michael, you really hit the nail on the head in terms of what our secret weapon is. And our secret weapon is focus. The fact that we only have one domain name to focus on. So we raised, as Colin said, $8.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent five something. We've got money left over. We've got a 7-figure marketing budget ready, and all of that is focused on .club. We don't have to wake up in the morning and say, okay, today, which of our children are we going to pay attention to, right?
Right.
We have a single child home. So we're very focused on that. We have money that we'll be spending. We'll be spending on general awareness. We'll be doing digital campaigns. We're actually going to be doing some outdoor and print campaigns. A lot of this will start. Some things will be very targeted toward the trademark holders during Sunrise, and then as we get closer to and through GA, you'll see more of the broader-based general awareness campaigns happening. So we'll be supporting just .club in general, as well as doing some very specific stuff with our registrar partners. Also, when you talk about the different layers of that pyramid of opportunities for .club, there's a lot of targeted things we can do in each of those areas. So when you talk about social, we'll be doing a lot of social media marketing directed at those Facebook groups and those LinkedIn groups, and et cetera, et cetera. We'll be doing things in some of these verticals. There are associations that cater to nightclubs and bars. There are associations that cater to sports teams and golf and country clubs. So we'll be doing marketing through those opportunities as well, so we can hit each of those verticals. So there will be quite a bit of support. And as you pointed out, all of our support is going to one string. So on a per domain basis, we expect that .club will probably have more spent on it than most other individual TLDs, because we don't have to share our resources.
And then, where that really comes, through is PR. For instance, we hired a PR. We have a full-time PR firm that's working with us every month, and just last week or the week before, Jeff was on All Things Considered on NPR. It's one of the nice program discussion about the whole GTLD space. We're getting calls, every couple of weeks from journalists as well. It's an interesting story, right? And .club's the first social TLD to come to market, and people are beginning to wake up to the space. So, any TLD launching today has got to be thinking about the PR, the public relations around it.
That's smart that you're hired a PR firm. What is the firm's name, just for clarification?
Get the Scoop?
Yeah.
Get the Scoop. All right. Your registry owns .club.com, which you're currently using for the registry information page until .club top-level domain is launched and in the root. Will you redirect your .club.com to a domain name on the .club TLD at that point?
Yeah, that's correct. So nick.club will be the first name. nic.club will be the first name. We're expecting it to happen close to Christmas.
Yeah.
Saint Nick.club will be
something. Saint Nick will be bringing.
We're
us
coming
Nick.
out for Christmas.
Yeah. So that's nic.club.
Yeah.
Right. Makes sense. All right. I had a question from a reader recently submitted. He asked, new TLDs like .kiwi and .club own the .tld.com domain name, but not tld.com, like kiwi.com or club.com. Do you see the value of those domain names increasing as the new top-level domains become launched?
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say that. So just recently, a few days ago, we bought nickclub.com. I think in the next 3 to 4 years that, great domain names, great .com names that have club in it will actually go up in value. Mm-hmm. I think the longer tail, when you get into, certain county, Napa, wine, XYZ.com, I think those might go down in value because you can easily get a great .club. But the reality is the names that, the great .com names, they'll keep going up in value.
So if somebody owns pokerclub.com or wineclub.com, if somebody actually develops wine.club, you believe that will increase the value of the .com equivalent?
I think in the short term, although I think, there is a paradigm shift happening here
Mm-hmm.
in the next few years that is going to change. People will become more accustomed to having more than .com. I mean, just the very fact, if you step outside of the United States, like up in Canada, when we launched .ca, it was all .com in 1998. Today, it's, there are 10% of the country's population has it, it's the .ca. So it's a very popular brand. So there are other TLDs other than .com out there in the marketplace. And we think, .club will be one of those TLDs that really gets into the psyche of people around the world as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else that you guys would like to leave investors and entrepreneurs with as we wrap up this interview that I haven't touched on yet?
I think that it's going to be interesting. I think when you look at domain investing now, with all of these new TLDs, hundreds of new TLDs coming out, and obviously thousands of names, and a lot of them are good names. A lot of them are names that don't have meaning or competing with .com. I think this is where I think the domain investor can really profit from, because they can pick and choose the winners. And it's hard for an end registrant or an end user to try to pick and choose in an environment like this. This is a complicated launch. So I think, the things that domain investors should really consider looking at is it in the short term, at least, is it a continuous innovation? Is it something that the average consumer can easily make a leap to? Do they have to, if they have to be told what it means, the TLD, I think it's going to be harder for that name to grab on. I think they have to look at the actual pre-registrations, see what names are in the top 10, the top 20 lists. I think they have to, look at whether or not it's a global brand. I think they have to look at, quite frankly, let the focus. If this was one of 300 names that was being launched right now, that's a horse that, it's a different breed. It's still the same horse, but it's a different jockey, we'll call it, right?
And you want to know that the name's going to be supported too, because that's going to increase its value. But I also think, as I think domain investors probably know a lot better than I do, successful domains have been brandable domains, right? Things that are brandable, that increases their value. And I think the introduction of all these new top-level domains is all about branding, right? I mean, let's face it, you don't need to know a URL to find something on the internet anymore. There was a time where if you didn't know the very specific web address for some site, you could not find them. That's no longer the case. So getting a great domain name is not about getting a great physical address so someone can find you. It's about getting a great brand. It's about a name that's brandable, that's easy for people to remember, so that they, it becomes part of your brand. So I think the domain investors have a lot of experience with that, because those have been some of the more successful sales in the past. So when you think about, what domains are brandable, what will have that kind of meaning, those are the ones that are going to be valuable.
I agree.
Yeah, it makes sense. This is the point of the conversation where I ask the readers to contribute their comments and questions. And if they have any, they can post them below the video. There's a comment section. When questions are posted, I'll ask Colin and Jeff to come back and answer as many as they can.
Absolutely.
All you have to do is say, if you enjoyed the conversation, if you learned something, please take a moment and post a thank you, you appreciate the fact that you two took time out of your busy schedule to come on here and share more information. I know that I've learned a lot about the .club, what your mission is, and how you're going to go to market. That's different than a lot of other top-level domains that are coming out in the market. So I say thank you first. Colin Campbell, CEO of .club. Jeff Sass, CMO of .club. Thank you for coming on the Domain Sherpa Show, sharing your knowledge and information about the registry, and thanks for being Domain Sherpas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.